Counting down from 3, 2, 1. All right, you know the routine. If it's Tuesday, that can mean only one thing. It's now time for you and me and Mike Fasolo to be talking about topics that are relevant to the craft and business of making comics. Mike, how are you tonight?
I'm doing okay. I think my screen's a little dark though. Do I look? Is it too dark?
Your left is a little too bright. It's there's like this weird overlight. That's a little better. Yeah, that's a little better. I don't know if you noticed, Mike. This is 2 weeks of no shaving. What do you think?
If that was me, I'd be happy, but I'd also be a little embarrassed.
2 weeks, 2 full weeks. I was hoping to have something a little bit more grisly looking, but alas, it was not to be. I did try. I try to grow for you a little bit of facial hair.
I'm not sure that you concentrate enough on it. Like I think for someone like you really got to focus. Like when you go to bed at night, really try to grow the hair.
Maybe I need to take vitamins or something. So, Mike, I was concerned. There was a series of headlines that led to this conversation tonight, and I actually want to have a legitimate conversation as people who are working in comics, which I work in comics in the screen business. For lack of a better term, because we now have multiple screens, and there's been this hue and cry that there are hue and cry that there are too many superhero movies, and that there's something that's called superhero fatigue. So I created a few slides, and I would like to share them with you to get the conversation started. So let me pull up my handy dandy slides. This one features the blockbuster headline that the Flash fizzles at the box office amid Ezra Miller controversy and studio woes. Let me show you another one. And that this is important. We'll go back to these. The Flash disappoints with $55 million debut. Pixar's Elemental flops with 29.5 in the battle of the box office lightweights.
That's harsh.
Superhero fatigue is real. The Cure make better movies than The Flash.
I think in general they just need to make better superhero movies.
But wait, here's the thing. I find that anytime there's a lot of something, somebody's like, there's Star Wars fatigue.
Well, yeah, there is.
There's Harry Potter fatigue, right? As I start to look at these headlines, I can't help but notice that no matter when there is something and it is capitalized on, there's a discussion that have we hit peak superhero? Have we hit peak Harry Potter? Have we hit peak Game of Thrones? And there's always someone there who's saying, oh, this is the final nail in the coffin. And I can see their perspective, but I also can see the opposite side of it. But as a comic book writer and a professional, and I hope to see my comic books make it to the silver screen or the small screen, I hope that there is still room and not this over fatigue of superhero genre movies. But I wanted to know what your thoughts were as you were researching this.
It's tough because I'm a big fan of all the superhero movies. There are some that I haven't watched and some that I'm just like blah on. But does seem to be like an overabundance because it's one of those things that they see that it's making money. And so, hey, if it's making money, pump out as much as they can to make all the money they can. And because eventually it is gonna die out. It is like
Ariel,
Star Wars.
Arts Mermaid says, hi, hi.
Hi, Arts.
Hi, hi.
But Star Wars stuff, they have, I don't know how many shows of Star Wars are out now. And it is, after a while, it's cool when you get to see a superhero movie, once a year, maybe twice a year. But when you're seeing one 10 times a year, you're like, okay, it is too much.
And what what was concerning was, so Ari Rubin asks, isn't the new Spider-Verse movie doing well? And I think that's a valid point, Mike.
Yeah,
The new Spider-Verse movie has opened to great acclaim and apparently excellent box office. And there it seems to be no limit in sight of the number of ways that Spider-Man can be exposed. A great point. What are your thoughts on that, Mike?
well, it's also has to do with the movie itself. If it's a good movie, that makes a huge difference because the first round of people that go to see it are going to be the ones that tell their friends and family, oh, you definitely have to go see this. And if it's just a crappy blah movie, no one's going to care. So you can have superhero fatigue of all the Spider-Man movies, but if every one of them is great, you're going to keep getting people to see them. After they start to, when you have something like, Superman versus Batman, which was just awful, who wants to go see that one? You don't want to. But if it was a spectacular movie, then yeah, you're going to get a huge box office blockbuster.
Well, Arts Mermaid says the frequency of dispersion, is it dispersion or distribution? Definitely plays a factor. I'm not sure if dispersion was, yeah, but we'll go with it. Dispersion is a good word. I'll look it up in the dictionary later. But I think, is it frequency, Mike, or sheer volume? Because sometimes it's a little of both. Do you have a sense that maybe there was too many DC movies coming out and that led to people being less than enthusiastic about the Flash movie?
It does that. I mean, the whole Ezra Miller controversy with all his issues, but again, I think Flash should have been, according to the box office, should have been a much bigger movie. I haven't seen it, so I can't say whether I enjoyed it or not. But I think it should have been better.
So here's the thing. I mean, and many of the articles do mention the controversies around the lead actor, but this is not the first time, lead talent has stirred up controversy. They have their own lives and personalities. Do you think that it's more superhero fatigue, DC movie fatigue, Snyderverse fatigue? Or do you think that there was a part of it that was the controversies around the actor Ezra Miller?
Well, I think the controversy stuff usually happens after the movie. Like this happened pre-movie and during the movie that he had all this stuff, or filming of the movie that he had all this stuff happen. So it came out before the movie. Usually it's like, oh, this guy got picked up for drunk driving or whatever, but it's after the movie has already come out. So that played a little bit into it. But I also think it is a lot of DC stuff because there hasn't been a really good, solid DC movie that people have, talked about and loved. I think the last one that I can remember was the first Shazam, which was great. It was a lot of fun. And I think that did pretty well in the box office.
Did you see the second one though? Was it
I did
enough?
see the second one, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun, but apparently it was a big flop in the box office.
So now, Arts Mermaid says DC live action movies have a history of not being liked, so it could also be conditioned. So live action DC equals bad movie. I mean, there is something to be said with if you don't already enjoy the Snyderverse or you don't enjoy the Snyderverse, there is a chance that you may not like this movie. For example, I think one of the most fulfilling DC movies in a long time was outside of the Snyderverse, which was James Gunn's The Suicide Squad,
Yes.
right? Not Suicide Squad, but the Suicide Squad,
Yeah.
with the worst naming possible of a movie reboot. But I think there's a good point there, which is you've seen enough of these Snyderverse movies. Either you like what Zack Snyder does, and I happen to like what Zack Snyder does, or it's not your thing. And it's easy to stay away because you go, okay, well, Flash slots into that Snyderverse, but Shazam does not.
Yeah. But again, like the Suicide Squad was a good, fun movie. It wasn't just the typical, blah thing that gets put out. So there have been some good DC ones like Suicide Squad, the first Shazam, Peacemaker on TV. It's not a movie, but Peacemaker TV series is phenomenal. It's so much fun, and if you make them fun and enjoyable, like most of the Marvel movies are, you're going to get a bigger reaction. Because
and I'll go back to this as well. I hit Star Wars fatigue. I was like many people our age, grew up with Star Wars. I think every generation has grown up with Star Wars, and there is this point where I started watching the shows like The Mandalorian, and then there was these other shows. It started to feel like homework. Like I was like, oh, I better watch this, and I don't want to miss, what happened with the Mandalorian, and then something else, and everybody's raving about it, and I started to get fatigued. Like I started to not feel like I wanted to watch it. Did you feel that way at all when some of these shows were coming out?
Some of them, yeah. Like I did like The Mandalorian. I was really, really looking forward to the Book of Boba Fett, and that one was just it ended up just kind of being blah. And that's, I keep going back to it. It's if you make it good, you're going to get people to, be interested in seeing more of it.
And it is also worth noting, and I will note, they said, people were fatigued from Harry Potter. They were based on the books.
Yes.
They weren't going and making these other side adventures like Rogue, whatever, and Star Wars, Rogue One, outside of canon. And, people were getting tired of those. But here's the thing I thought was interesting, because The Flash disappoints with this $55 million debut. And just for context, it costs more money than they've made, but they'll eventually make it up, right? Like everybody wants a big box office in the very first couple of weeks and for it to not trail off. But The Flash will make it in secondary markets, and they'll make their money back. It won't be the blockbuster tentpole that they needed to draw the money in. But here's another thing that's worth noting here, which this doesn't seem to get the same swipes. Nobody's saying, oh, is there Pixar fatigue? But Elemental underperformed as well. There's this beautiful halo effect around Pixar, and they're like, oh, well, this one flopped with half as much money. Well, not quite half as much money, but what are your thoughts on this? Was it just a flop weekend? Was it the film?
Well, I think it's like Pixar, it's not all in the same universe. Like when you watch a Flash movie or a Shazam movie, it's all in the DC universe. So it's all tied in together. Pixar's are just, they're just one-offs. So
except when they're not, except when they're Toy Story
the Toy Story stuff. Yeah.
Now, did Toy Story wear out its welcome?
Yes. I think they had a good run. 1, 2, and 3, very good, all good, solid movies, and 3 was a great way to end it. So why make a 4th? I mean, but of course, then it comes back to the money. Hey, the first 3 made us $100 billion. Let's do another one.
Didn't they also do some television with Toy Story?
They've done like little shorts. I don't know if they had a series or anything, but yeah, it sometimes does come down to money. It's just a franchise. It's like John Wick. They see it's
well, and Fast and the Furious. Yeah, Fast and Furious. There's 10 of them. I'm like, make another 10.
yeah, and they will probably keep going. They'll go as long as they can.
I want Vin Diesel's son and daughter in the movie. And he like Rocky, right? Like I want him to then after Rocky, I want it to be like Creed.
Yeah.
I haven't I haven't seen any of the Creed movies. I felt like Rocky peaked and I didn't want to see any more Rocky. Did you
Yeah.
ever did you see it? Like
Creed.
I
I
haven't
did.
seen
I
any.
saw Creed 1 and 2, and they were fine. They were, they're Rocky. It's just with a different actor. It's kind of a slightly different story, but it's the same story as Rocky.
Now, Art's Mermaid also brings up Wonder Woman. I thought the first movie was tremendous.
Yep, first one
I
was great,
could not wait for 1984.
and then it was awful.
And it was hard to understand it. It was like the same people. You put them together, gave them another chance, and for some reason, it didn't work. And I wouldn't attribute that to superhero fatigue,
No,
right? Like
that's
I wouldn't say, "Oh, I was fatigued from seeing too much of a good thing."
no,
I
that's
wasn't
just
like,
bad.
"Oh,
It's bad movies. It's just a bad movie writing experience because a lot of people in the second one, whether they get the same writing crew back or not, I think a lot of um, production companies and film companies, they're like, we want to put this and this and this in. These things have to be in, and that kind of puts a damper on the movie. Like, oh, Wonder Woman has to do this, or Superman has to, do this, and that sometimes ruins things for the writer because I was going to
now
tell a cool story, but
you
now
see
I can't.
Ant-Man and Wasp: Quantum Mania."
Quantumania. See, I enjoyed that. It
Did
wasn't
you went
great,
and
but it
saw it?
was
You saw it?
yeah, yeah. It wasn't the best one. The first Ant Man was the best one, but second one was good. Or no, second one. It's like second one, Ant Man the Wasp was good, and this one was fine. I there was no point in it where I was like, this is awful, but it was just a fine, solid movie.
Now,
But if they came out with Ant Man 4 and 5, I'd be like, you're a little too much now.
well, is there a limit? We just said there's Fast and the Furious 10 movies, there's 4 John Wicks. How many James Bonds are there? Is it a fatigue thing or is it just like you're tired of that universe?
I I I gotta go with just bad movies. If it's a good movie, like Fast and the Furious, there's nothing to the stories. They're all the exact same thing. Crazy car rides, but they pump the action up each time. So I think at one point I haven't seen most of them, but I think at one
What?
point they get into space, they launch a car into space or something.
I'm sorry. It sounded like you haven't seen all of them.
I haven't seen all of them. I
I must
saw
be.
1 and 2, I think.
They do in 9 go out into outer space. They also and since eventually you will see it, they have a stunt that is so ridiculously over the top where a car swings on a vine.
Yeah, but
They
it's
jump
it's
buildings. They
yeah,
jump
it's
building to
it's
building.
popcorn movie, but they are enjoyable. Like the stunts just keep getting bigger. Same thing with John Wick. First one by far the best John Wick movie,
Mm.
but they have gotten progressively crazier as they move on, and that I think adds to it because when it gets just all actiony, you don't need a great story.
I
John
disagree.
Wick.
I disagree. And actually, Arts Mermaid brings something in. Could it be budget misplacement? Parenthetically saying all of the funding goes to one CGI sequence and then neglects other parts of the story. And then here's the thing: could it also be a cover up for the fact that no one wants to take risks with new things, all the new live action remakes of Disney films? Let's go back to that one. Let's go to this one, which is, they start off with a special effect and build a movie around it. Do you think that that is what's happening?
I think that's for like a movie like Fast and the Furious. Somebody comes up with some crazy stunt idea, and then they build it around that, which I think for that movie is fine because it works. I mean,
Well,
there's 10 of
I
them.
think it's fine, and I think it's the aesthetic of the movie is this is an over the top. It takes itself very seriously. Right? It does. That's the thing. It's not winky at all. It's not, we're in on the joke with you. They are like, we are dead serious about this. You know, Dom doesn't crack jokes. This is like, and that's
But
what makes it's earnest. Like it's
but you
so
also
earnest.
know that it's so stupid. It is ridiculous. Those movies are just they're just dumb. There's like you don't come out of there going, that really made me, think about humanity and or the plight of the passenger pigeon. They don't make you think about anything. It's just you're going to the movies to see something nuts and you're like, I was a great movie. And that's it. That's all it needs to be.
The plight of the passenger pigeon.
The passenger pigeon.
I'm a
Or the
little
dodo bird.
I'm all right. So here's something, and I think we have to get to this. This is good right here, right here, right here. Martin Scorsese. He says that Marvel movies are not cinema. And he went on to explain it in many different ways. He wrote an op-ed piece in the New York Times talking about how these movies are not cinema, in part because there is no real tension, there's no real innovation. And as much as I love Martin Scorsese, I completely disagree. I think that these movies are truly innovative. I think that they are the epitome of pushing the envelope that allows us to see what cinema can do. But this is the kind of conversation that is quoted when people talk about franchise fatigue. They're like, oh, obviously, the grandmaster of crime storytelling says that these are not real cinema. What do you think, Mike?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of that comes from just the movies that he has made and the movies that he grew up with. That just wasn't even said in one of his articles that if he was coming up around this time, he probably would want to make one of these movies. But
which is weird, right?
Which is weird to hear him say now after he said they're not movies, not cinema. But it's just the generation that he grew up with. Like a Marvel, Captain America movie is not his type of movie, but he'll tell 1,000 mafia stories. So it all just comes from
right. Like it's sometimes it's when people our age and older will sometimes say like rap music, that's not real that's not real music. When I was your age, we were doing the Lindy, and you're like, it's just as valid, right? Like, and they'll pick up rap music, and so it says I feel like this should be a film franchise fatigue, but and yet that's where I think a lot of this is going. They're saying that this franchise is not real cinema and it's fatiguing, and I actually will disagree with that. And I understand she might not be advocating for it, but here's the one. This is the one. The real cure for superhero fatigue is just making better movies, right?
Yes. Well, yes. Just making better. It doesn't have to be better than The Flash. Just better movies in general.
Right. No one gets sick of like, oh, boy, that movie was too good.
Yes.
Right. That was too good. So this is an interesting quote. It says 100% agreement that fatigue is from sitting through a lousy movie made around characters that should be used better. The genre is losing its fan love touch and feeling more like films made by executive committee. But here's the thing, and I kind of sort of agree and kind of sort of don't. And I'd like to get your take on this. The Marvel movies, which that culminated with the Avengers Endgame, which was, I think, stunning, and the Spider-Man, what is it? No Place But Home.
No Way Home and
No Way Home. They were committee built movies. I mean, you can't deny there is a committee that got together. Sony made a deal with Marvel movies. I mean, those are committees. They got together. They got different universes and different heroes and different actors and different characters together. This was not like a singular vision, like a Spike Lee wrote, directed, produced, and edited the movie. These movies have always been built by committee.
Well, I don't know committee like that. Like having Marvel and team up with Sony, that's a different committee than having one solid writer or even a group of writers sit down and write a good solid movie. I think what they're saying with committees is that the executives have to get involved, the productions people have to get involved, the movie company says we need this to happen because this will make us more money.
But the day of the solo auteur, is long. There's rarely a movie where somebody comes in, they write it, they direct it, they
Oh
edit it,
yes.
they produce it. This idea that people think that like, oh, these movies were made by committees, so they must be bad. And it's like, if you liked Iron Man, it was made by a committee of people.
Well, I mean, see, I don't that's not I don't think the committee that they're talking about. They are as writers, directors, producers, and all that. But when everybody wants to get their fingers in the pie, that's what makes it bad. Too many cooks in the kitchen. If you have the writer and the director, or the writers and a director sit down and say, "This is the good, solid story we're going to tell," fine. You can, I guess, say that that's a committee thing, but it's one little tiny group making the story, not, oh, this has to be cleared through 17 levels of the executives and they all have to put their fingerprints on it. That's hard.
What if they're really good? I mean, here's the thing. How do you pronounce his name? Kevin
Feige.
Feige. Okay. So
Feige.
how do you say it?
Feige.
Feige. So
Feige.
Kevin Feige came in and put his fingerprints on these movies, but then he put his fingerprints on the other movies, some of which are arguably by some standards maybe not as good as that first wave. I'm not enjoying them as much, but he's the supposed to be the unifying factor. I mean, what's different?
But what's different is that when they give him a movie, say you do, Ant-Man. You're going to do Ant-Man. You're going to be in charge of it. You want to write it, you want to get your director, whatever. That's him being in charge of it. But then when it sees that are making more money, and now the studio needs this to be in the movie. The studio has to have the character do this or do that, or these other group of people have to now be involved in the movie. That's a different story. When you have to when you don't get, say, final cut on the movie, it's not your movie anymore. It becomes a conglomeration of all these people, and a lot of the executives who have never written anything, never directed anything, they go, oh, I can do it better. So this is how you edit this part. This is how you make this character better, even though it doesn't work. And you can see that a lot because at the very beginning, all these movies were done by one or two people, a good writer, good director, good producer. And as they've gone down the line, things have gotten worse and worse and worse because more people have gotten involved in them.
All right, let's take some questions here. It could also be cover-ups for the fact that no one wants to take risks with new things, all the new live action remakes of Disney films. Now, here's the weird thing about it, right? We love seeing these characters animated on the page. Now they say, let's go to the next level and take these animations and make them live action. And it's hard to argue that any of them have captured that same magic of the 2D animation that we loved. And I don't know. What do you think? Do you think Art's Mermaid has a good point that they're trying
I
to
think it is a good point in that nobody does want to take risks. But this, I think, is just another kind of a money grab thing. Oh, The Little Mermaid did great 30 years ago. Let's do a live action of it. There's no reason for it. It's just, oh, we'll put the movie out. All the people who have nostalgia for the old one will go see the new one. So we'll make money, and we don't have to put any more real effort into it because the story's already there. The story was already great. There's nothing we have to do.
So, but I think I'm one of the lone voices in this. In theory, I love the idea. That is, you say to me, Little Mermaid realized with real people, and I'm like, oh, I would love to see that. But at the same time, I look at it and I don't know how to take this one off. Hold on. I'm kind of like I would like to see it, and to me it sounds kind of like jumping from the comic page to the screen. I don't know what's different. Why is it not working?
Well, for me, I just don't care. Like I saw the movie, Little Mermaid. I saw it. I loved it. I thought it was great. There doesn't seem to be any reason to remake it live action. It's like,
is the reason because you can attract a new generation, or should you just do like, I don't know, put Little Mermaid back into the movie theater for a run?
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to do something, I would say just re-release the animated one. Little kids will go see an animated movie.
I went and with Janet and I, my wife Janet and I went and saw Jaws in the movie theater. They did like a 1 week rerun, and we went and saw it. And we
Yeah,
realized that that movie came out in 1975. I had never actually seen it on the screen.
yeah, I didn't see it in the movie theater either.
Right? I've only ever seen it on television. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Now, Ari Rubin says they've been saying stuff like that forever. Genre fiction isn't real literature, etc. They've criticized that fantasy isn't real literature, sci-fi isn't real literature, mystery isn't real literature, and only literature is real literature.
You got to
And
say it like that.
literature, and only literature can be literature. And then you go like, what makes literature literature? And there was always this sort of view that they would say like, oh, you're teaching comic books in school, and you're like, yeah, it's a medium, it's not a
Yeah.
genre. And I think even what Ari Rubin says, which is genre fiction isn't real literature, I think we see that sometimes even in the Academy Awards, right? Like the achievement of Spider-Man No Way Home, and then what was it one? Licorice Pizza.
I didn't see it, but I heard it was great.
But yeah, I heard it was great, but like they want something that's less genre and more literature for the Academy Awards, and that's their aesthetic. What do you think, Mike? Do you think that genre fiction gets the credit it's due, or do you think it's always looked down upon?
It's always going to be looked down upon because it's like you said, it's not the literature. It needs. There are some people that will always want it to be that step above, and a superhero movie or something else like that can never attain that. It can if it's a good enough story.
Yeah, and why couldn't Stephen King's novel it be literature, right? Like,
Yeah, there's
why couldn't it be? And I look at that and I think like, oh, what you mean is the great American novel, a Philip Roth style novel, or Patty Chayefsky type.
Emily Bronte, like
Yeah, and
those.
you're like, oh yeah, Bronte. It has to be Jane Austen, right? And
Yeah,
you say like, but I don't know, maybe Jane Austen would have written science fiction. Who knows?
yeah. That's
If
the
it
thing.
were available, who knows?
It's I don't know. It's like the term for classic movies. Like they're the only classic movies in the world. It just goes to what the generation who's watching it thinks.
That's right. And Miriam says, "Hey, everyone."
Hey, Miriam.
Incidentally, Arch Mermaid Gracie, her puppy, is watching and is very interested. I think,
Or
Mike, easy there. You want a treat? So, I think the key thing that, just in summary, that we have to keep in mind now as comic book creators, and I sometimes and potentially incorrectly have advised many of the members of our writing community, including Ari Rubin, that launching a new superhero comic book or universe may not be advisable,
yeah.
right? Because there is already these established universes of superheroes. What are your thoughts?
That is a tough one, and it's one of those things that I would probably recommend against as well. But if it's a great story, then I think it's fine. If you can tell 1,000 wizard stories, but when you get something like Harry Potter, that just captures the imagination because it was very well told. Even though there's a dozen other books with, young boy wizards, coming of age, it's the same story.
What kind of
It has
books are
to
you
be
reading,
that.
Mike, about young boys?
Young boy wizards.
What's on your nightstand? I have to admit, I have never read a Harry Potter book, nor have I seen a Harry Potter film.
What?
Yeah,
You should watch them.
yeah, I am not part of the Potterverse. Mike, I will say that I agree that movies have to be good. I disagree with Scorsese that they're not cinema. It feels like he's talking. He's not even sure himself.
He's kind of it's not nice to say, but he's the cranky old man right now.
I feel like it's a get off the lawn moment.
Yeah.
But not get off the lawn moment is your trivia time, and everybody is welcome to join in and offer their ideas. Usually, it's just Mike and me talking about a bit of trivia that you can use as a creative prompt. Writers, you can use it to frame a story, or artists, find a single illustration that encapsulates the idea that you would have. Maybe draw the cover of the story for the
Ooh,
trivia that Mike
I like that.
presents here. Mike, talk to us today. What is the trivia for today?
DB Cooper. Now, most people know the story of DB Cooper.
I do not know the story of
You
DB.
don't know? Wow. Well, he got on a plane, and they were flying to, I think, Seattle, and he called the stewardess over and said he had a bomb in his suitcase, and he wanted $200,000 and 4 parachutes.
What?
And they were, yeah, this was where I forget. I think it was in the maybe 70s. I forgot exactly when it was. Anyway, they refueled. He got the money. He let everybody off.
Wait. Just back up. He got on the plane and he wanted what?
He wanted $200,000.
Now, where are they going to get $200,000 on a plane? Do they pass a hat around?
Well, no, they landed in. I think they landed in Seattle, and the FBI, they wanted everybody released. So they gave him the $200,000 and the 4 parachutes. And then
now, why did he need 4 parachutes?
Well, that's one of the big questions. So he released all the passengers. He kept a couple of the crew members. Obviously, he kept the pilots. And he said, "Okay, we're going to Mexico City." So they chartered a course for Mexico City, and over Reno, Nevada, he jumped out of the plane
with a parachute.
With at least 1 parachute, I guess. And since then, no one's been able to find any trace of him. So the question is, did he survive? He jumped out in bad weather. The FBI had researched it, and they said no one could have survived that jump, who wasn't trained. But there's no trace of him at all. So did he survive? What happened to the money? Why did he do it? Just for, $200,000?
Yeah, but back then, $200,000, let's be clear, was a lot of money.
So what happened to DB Cooper?
Right. So number one, if you've forced a plane down and you forced the FBI to give you $200,000, which at the time was a substantial amount of money, and said, "And I want a parachute," would you trust to put that parachute on? Because I would be like, what if you guys like what if there was just it was a backpack with silverware?
Well, I mean, I'm assuming that there were, parachutes in the plane, maybe for the pilots in case of emergency. I would guess. It probably wouldn't have been a parachute that was packed by the FBI because they.
Oh yeah, wear this parachute. Drink from this cup. No, just this cup.
No, this cup.
Here, I'll drink from it first. See?
Yeah. So it's.
But wait. So I'm still trying to get my hands around this. So the DB Cooper, he gets the money. Is he by himself?
He's by himself. Yes.
And he jumps out of a plane.
There was a rainstorm. He jumped out over Reno, Nevada. So it was just, bad weather. Up high in the mountains, it's cold and snowy. Even if he'd landed safely, he still would have been drenched. He only had, his shoes and his suit on. So where's he going to find food and shelter and all that? What happened to him? Did he survive? Did he die? Is he somewhere on the mountain somewhere?
I am absolutely fascinated by this. This was probably my favorite of all the
really? I thought everybody knew about DB Cooper.
I have never heard of DB Cooper.
There's a whole Netflix thing. I think it's called "What Happened to DB Cooper."
You kidding?
No, you should tune in.
I have totally got to watch. Okay, so Mike, talk to me. What in your mind is the story? And for everyone else, feel free to put it into the chat. Arts Mermaid says she watched it, so that's good. And then the artists could maybe do a cover illustration of what they think the DB Cooper story is. Mike, what's the DB Cooper story?
I would tie it into something. I would make it a sci-fi story, tie it into something with his suitcase, because he did jump out with a suitcase. Like, what was a suitcase? Clearly wasn't a bomb. What if it was a time travel device? He jumps out of the plane, pushes a button, boom, he ends up, 3 years earlier with $200,000. He's living like a king. Or he can jump, even further into the past, or he could jump into the future. I would make it something that was involved with the suitcase that gave him some ability to somehow, work around jumping out of the plane and trying to survive that.
See, yours is so much better. I was going really straight line comedy, sort of a Will Ferrell style of comedy where, he parachutes down and, just many bad things happen. I totally did not put his then sketch into AI and see what he looks like now. We'll find out he's really Joe Biden. Does he look like Joe Biden? Hold on, let's just see. Let's see. Does he look like Joe?
Maybe in his younger days.
I have to say she's not all that wrong. He kind of
could do that
like Joe Biden.
He jumps out now. He's changed his name to Joe Biden. Now he's president.
And then Andres Avila says, according to Loki, DB Cooper was Loki.
Who's Loki? I mean, I know Loki is Thor's brother, but
he's really Loki. Okay.
Could have been.
And I was introduced to DB Cooper by a Beastie Boys song. But that's not real music. When I was your age.
Haven't heard that one.
The Beastie Boys were like all over pop culture. Okay, I would have gone straight up comedy, Will Ferrell style comedy. He jumps out of the plane, he gets caught on the wheels or something. They take him much further than they think, and he actually, lands with the plane, and he's beat up, and then somebody rescues him. And I don't know. I think you totally killed it on this one. I think this is this is the first time that time travel seems to be away. Or Twilight Zone, Rudy, he was never there.
Oh, yes.
Oh, maybe Art's Mermaid just leveled you up there, Mike.
Yeah, it could be something like that. Like there really was no DB Cooper, and when they gave him the $200,000, the flight crew just took it and they made up the whole story.
They just pushed him out of the plane.
Yeah, just some random passengers. They're like, "This is the guy."
Question: do you think that this was Art's Mermaid idea or Gracie the dog's idea?
I would go with Gracie.
Go with Gracie. I'm going to go with Gracie. I'm giving Gracie the credit. I think that the idea of the pilots going like, this son of a, and they just shove him out of the plane, and they're like, we got $200K, and who's to say that we don't just put it here? Right? Nothing in the overhead compartment. He jumped out in Nevada. We don't know where he went. That could be I'm going to go with that.
Okay.
I'm going to take your idea and mix it. And oh yeah, there you go. Gracie hijacked the phone. Gracie has the best ideas.
Way to go, Gracie.
Way to go, Gracie. Say goodnight, Gracie. All right, Mike, this was a great one. And if people want to continue having these awesome episodes, please like, comment, and subscribe. Spread the word. Tell your friends. Tell your enemies. And definitely see us again next week. We appreciate having you come, join us, participate. Gives us all something to do. And by next week, this beard will be even more impressive. Good night, everybody.